All right. So, welcome back to the podcast. It's fun saying that actually, and saying I've got a podcast. And I've got a very smiley guest with me today, someone from Australia. We're just talking about how, yeah, I love smiley Australians. So it's great to have one on the show right now. Sharon and I actually trained together to become coaches. It was probably around 6 or 7 months, something like that, training us to become coaches. And we spent like weekends together, a lot of intense time, let's say. I knew straight away, I don't know if she's going to agree, but I knew straight away that I liked her as soon as heard her talk and had like private conversations with her. I just knew we were going to continue our like this relationship that we had. So she is a leader, and you're going to hear more about that in a moment. She's one of the leaders that I'm bringing into this podcast to give me an insight and give you an insight into what does it take to be a leader from the inside? Like, how does someone become that? How do you move into that way of being? So that's how I know her, and that's very short, but I'll ask her to introduce herself as well. Sharon, you tell everyone more about you. I've probably missed loads. Oh, you're a musician. That's another thing to mention.
I think that's a very generous term, Raj, but I'll go with it. Yeah, thank you. And you were right. There are always people that I think that we connect with who we know are, on our level and playing the same kind of game that we are. So yeah, whenever we would have those conversations when we were doing our coaching accreditation, I thought exactly the same thing. I thought this is we're on the same level here. So yeah, you weren't off beam at all there. So gosh, well, yes, I am Australian. I considered myself a nomad whilst I was living in Australia, actually, let alone after. 14 years ago, I left Australia to to live in London for 1 year, and that just kind of rolled on. So we were living in the UK for 13 years, and then as a result of Brexit, we decided to get out of there, and we now live in Malta because I am half Australian and half Maltese. So a very nice, very privileged combination. So yeah, I went from kind of, hot, dry country to grey, wet country to hot, dry country. So
Yeah.
it's nice to be back in that environment where, we get the sun 300 days a year and probably more. And I look out at the Mediterranean every day. So, nice place for me to be. What else? I do have my own business. So I have a limited company where I work for several clients, and I have done actually ever since I got to the UK. I left Australia working full-time and studying part-time, and then going to the gym for the rest of the time in my day. So that was just when I got to the UK, it was 2008. It was October 2008. And being in the very protected environment I was in Australia, we kind of getting to the UK was such a shock at that time. And I felt quite naive, actually, because we left and we were like, yay, we're going on this big adventure. And we rocked straight into the global financial crisis, and turned up into the UK and thought, hang on, this is not quite what we had in mind. I couldn't get work. I couldn't get work for probably close to 8 months, which is probably the longest time I'd ever been unemployed before. But, I realized we'd made a commitment and we were there, and, let's just stick it out. And so I started then doing work with social media, and I'd never done that before because this 2008, it had only just started, which just feels like 100 years ago. And so I was literally like one page ahead of, people on the social media manual. And so I started doing social media for companies. And I started doing it with a friend's coaching business, and we kind of bartered that, where she asked me to do her social media, and in return she would coach me, right, and do a bit of career coaching. So it started that way, and then she recommended me to other people, and so I had this little mini business going on around social media, and I was just like,
Yeah.
you know, what happened. But and then I missed the work that I was doing in Australia was based around human resources, and so I kind of missed doing that. I wanted to get back into HR, so I just started contracting for a couple of companies, and then landed kind of in a place where I set some fairly rigid boundaries, because in that first 6 months or so, I really was defined by the work that I did and by the study that I was doing in Australia. So when I got to the UK and I didn't know anybody and I didn't have any work, I got an opportunity to really question myself around, what's going on? Who are you? If you're not your job and you're not your study, then who are you? And so that really gave me a bit of a push to be like, okay, on one hand, it was like, oh, I can be anyone I want to be. And on the other hand, it was like, I've got no idea who it is that I want to be and what I want to do. So I just had that kind of fun, gutsy, experiment. I remember the first client that I went to, who wasn't my friend, the coaching client, or my coach. I remember going to see them on the bus, and on the way there, trying to figure out, how much do I charge these people, and then finishing that call, and then just getting back on the bus, coming home. Just thought, this is not what having a business is, surely, But anyway, ends up it was. And so then I went back into HR, and then I just started contracting a lot. But I'd realized that, having worked in the UK then for probably what was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years, I realized I'd never worked in financial services. And, if you're working in London and you're not working in financial services, then there's something wrong with you. That's the story I was telling myself. So I aimed for financial services, and I got into a great organization where I contracted for quite some time, ended up being able to specialize in leadership development and learning, and then wanted to change tack again, because I just thought, this can't define me. I'm not going to always work in financial services. And so I decided I wanted to do something a little bit more creative and a bit more entertaining. So I went to work for some completely different organizations, like WarnerBros and Apple, and so that's where I've been. That's my journey, just pushing myself really to do different things.
Wow.
So
There's so much in that I wanted to pick apart. There's so much in that I want to pick apart. So I want to start with this, and for everyone that just heard, like, Sharon helps leaders for a living, right? But she also mentioned that she was like, who am I? Who am I to do this? But I do want to do this, right? I think that's a story that I faced as well. Like, I want to do this, but no, I know something's holding me back. So what is that? What do you think that is, firstly? Because I think a lot of people will face that I did, you did. What do you think that is? And how do you break past that kind of phase of you feel like you're stuck or you're questioning yourself, but you do know where you want to go? What is that, and how do you move forward from it?
I think what happened to me, and that's all I can talk about, is my experience. What happened to me was that I got so engrossed in this job that I was doing, and at the same time that I was studying, and so I was able to use what I was studying to apply in my job, and they just became kind of interconnected. And I was also in that kind of, I think at that point it was probably late 30s, early 40s, which is, most of the time where we all go, oh, wake up. it's not quite what we think is happening.
Yeah.
And I wasn't actually burnt out, I think, by the time I left Australia, but I was well on that road. Because I would literally, my day looked like, I would wake up, I would go to the gym, I would come home, I would have breakfast, I'd get ready to go to work, and then I'd go to work, then I'd go to uni. And sometimes on the back, like in between work and uni or after uni, I'd go to the gym again.
Yeah.
Bonkers insanity, and I had
Yeah.
all of my family stuff, commitments that I was doing all the time as well. I look back now and just think, I don't even know how that happened. I don't know how I did that. I think it was kind of just cruising along at a level of, this is how I've got to roll. So I'm just going to go with it. It's all I know. It's all I'm going to do. And then leaving that, even though I wanted to try something new, and I just thought, like, why not? Let's go there. I'd been to London before for 12 months when I was 22 or 23 or something, and always thought I'd go back. And I thought, like, why not? We don't have kids. Let's just go. And I remember my family at the time thinking, like, you're doing what? Like, that's just crazy, And I was like, no, it's going to be fun. It's only for a year, which they keep reminding me of, It's like, you can't count. We're up to 13 now, or 14.
Wow.
And it was just like a big adventure, This is the thing that we both wanted to do, my partner and I. So we got to London, and it almost was like a shock, Raj. It was almost like, oh, hang on. I'm not my job. I'm not my job. I'm not my study either. And I'm not my family because they're not here. Like, who am I? What do I do? What drives me? What motivates me? Am I just going to stay in my dressing gown under the duvet all day long? I did do that a couple of days, not many, but a couple of days. And it was a really interesting time. I really had to take a very close look at, what's the stuff that I like doing? What's important to me? What are the causes that I believe in? What are the things that I want to improve, not just within me, but within my life, within my world? And also, like, what's the work I want to do, and why do I want to do that work? That whole saying of, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, has always been my kind of, that's nice. That's what I want to get to. And that for me took a while. There was a journey there. So I did go back to working actually in HR when I started in the UK, was within recruitment, and I'd never actually done it before. So, but I was like, oh, well, can't be hard. It's just part of what I know. I'll give it a shot. And I really enjoyed it. But it wasn't challenging enough for me. And the social media thing was great. And what was challenging about that was literally, talking to a client and then me going home and figuring out how I was going to do that. Which tapped a little bit into the old imposter syndrome, but also just made me realize that actually they don't know what they're doing, and that's okay because that's not their gig. And I've said that I'll help them with it. I don't have to know everything, but I do have to, do what it was that they wanted me to do. So I started doing that, and then it got fascinating, and then it got old really quickly, the social media stuff, because it just wasn't intellectually challenging enough. And it was a very different world to what it is now. And back then it was Facebook and Twitter mostly. A little bit of LinkedIn, but not much. And there weren't clever algorithms, and it was like, you put something out there and you tell a story and you put a picture and that's it. And then then I realized it just kind of, that wasn't enough. And I really wanted, I'd studied HR management
Mm.
at uni, and that's what I wanted to get back into. And I wanted to do that because I really wanted to work, I think, on this shift between what we expect as a norm, in our, or what we were accepting as a norm in our everyday working life, and me kind of going, it's got to be better than this, like there's got to be more. I don't want to work for someone who whips everybody into shape and says, this is exactly what you do, and so I started thinking about, well, how do we change that? How would I go about making that different? And over that whole time of working in the UK, it wasn't really until I got into that financial services role where I was working in organization design and development, and we were looking at, pulling apart the business and people's jobs and, all that kind of stuff, and having to have some difficult conversations with people who would go, I want to put this person in that job. And, me, the purist from an organization design perspective, saying, well, but that's not going to work because, we've got this job and it looks like this, and that person doesn't look like this. And, so they were some really tough conversations. And then I got the opportunity to manage a team. And one of the things that I loved about coming to work in the UK was that I could work for myself and I didn't have to manage people, because I was doing it in Australia. And I genuinely think now that I probably was rubbish at it. I look back now and think there are so many things I could have done differently and done better. A lot of that was around, managing myself so that I could be a better version for other people. And obviously a lot of that comes with age, and a lot of that also comes with experience. So when I was asked if I wanted to manage this team for leadership development and learning, I was just like, no, this is, I'm at peace. I don't want to do it. When I dug underneath that, it was because I didn't want to get it wrong again. I didn't want people to have a bad experience of being led by me and or anyone else, into a horrible place. And so I shifted my mindset on that, So I guess the long answer to your question is, I just started thinking about things in a different way. And I started thinking about, how would I want it to be for me if I was coming into this, young and innocent and naive and brand new? What would I want to look like, which of course is not always the perfect answer, because that's just my take on the world. But I knew what I didn't want, and I think I know what other people don't want. They don't want to be belittled. They don't want to be discouraged. They want to be allowed their creative freedom. They want to be allowed flexibility in their roles. They want to be part of a big, successful unit, that can do positive things. So it was more, I think it was probably back then, it was more based on what I didn't want to happen rather than what I did want to happen,
Wow. When you were saying all that stuff, what came up for me was, just physically feeling it, right? Physically feeling what you didn't want, and then physically feeling what you did want, right? And you know how much I talk about life force, right? And that's what this podcast is about. It feels like that thing was bubbling up in you physically. It was like, ooh, this is what it could be like. And you felt that energetically, and you saw it perhaps. And you also saw what it could be like if you didn't go down that path, right? The path that you didn't want. And it's like something in you moved you into, oh, I have an idea, and now I'm going to take action on it, right? And the thing I'd love to break down in the journey, and maybe not it doesn't have to be the actual example you gave, but any time in your life where you have an idea, but then something comes up which might feel like it blocks you from physically taking action. You know, the thing that everyone faces. I face it all the time. Have an idea. Hey, I want to go and do this thing. I want to move to the other side of the world. Or for other people, it might be something smaller, right? It could be, I want to, this relationship doesn't feel right for me. Or it could be this job doesn't feel right. Or it could be something, anything, right? Or I want to start a business, but something's holding me back.
Yeah.
Everyone has these ideas, but then something in you, you've broken down, took action, right? What do
Mm.
you think holds people back, and maybe, or who has held you back sometimes? What do you think
Mm.
that's held you back from turning an idea into reality? And how do you think you've gotten through it in general, right?
I mean, look, I still have great ideas,
Yeah,
you know, that I think either now or in my past, I go, oh, should really have done that,
mm,
I remember when I was living in Brisbane, I probably was about, I don't know, early 30s, maybe mid 30s. And I remember seeing there was an old post office actually near my house that was vacant, and I thought I could turn that into a restaurant.
yeah,
I have no experience in this world at all, and I could call it That Place on the Hill, because people would go, oh, do you want to go for a coffee? Yeah, whereabouts? I don't know. Oh, what's that place on the hill? And so I had this entire thing, worked out in my brain. And
yeah,
I didn't go as far as, making plans or talking to anybody about it. It was probably one of the closest things that I ever thought to, this is what I want to do. And then at some point I realized I couldn't think of anything worse than working in a restaurant 7 days a week. Like it
mm,
just, so I was like, okay, no, that's not what I want to do.
yeah,
But I have, and I was actually only talking to a friend about this earlier in this week. I believe I have some freak of nature inside my brain. So one of the things, when I was listening to you ask that question, one of the things that I do apply this to is going for a cold swim, right? So it's
mm,
January. I'm very fortunate. I live in a place that, like the lowest temperature we get is like 14 degrees Celsius.
yeah,
But I will still go for a swim in those days, or I will go and swim in the Black Sea when I was in Turkey recently because I just wanted to. And there's one part of my brain that's having this conversation that goes, that's going to be cold and it's going to be freezing. And, oh my God, that's scary. What happens? You could possibly die. Like if you die
yeah,
down there, like people have to dig you out. No one's going to be able to tell John that you're dead. Like all of this entire thing is just running through my head. And then at the very same time, I'm literally walking into my bedroom, putting on my swimmers, picking up my towel, going upstairs, right?
yeah,
It's like, yeah, I hear you. And because I hear you, I'm doing something opposite to that,
yeah,
And so there's been quite a lot of that. And it's not necessarily my inner critic, because she's very loud.
mm.
And in fact, I've just broken up with her, so don't get on anymore. But it's a very different voice. It's almost a very pragmatic voice that sort of says, these things could happen if you do that. And
Yeah,
it's not me going, I'm going to ignore you, or I'm just going to go and do it. There's another part of me that says there's other pragmatic things that I could do. I could put my swimmers on, I could go and get my towel,
yeah,
And so those two things go in parallel. When I decided to work doing social media, I mean, God, when I look back now, I just think, what were you on? What were you taking that made you that to believe that you could actually do that for people? And there was definitely a driver for me, which was you don't have a job, you're not earning any income. It's expensive in London. And very soon, you're going to have to start feeling that. And so that was a bit of a driver. But it was something that fascinated me at the time. I knew that this was going to be a big game changer. as did everybody else that I used to deal with. I had like 5 or 6 clients. They all knew they had to be in social media, but they didn't know what to do about it, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, at this stage, you've got to have a presence. Let's just work on the presence, you know? So it was, I had a little bit of, you know, I better do something or I'm not going to earn any money as a driver. But there was also a bit of a fascination with me, and also a bit of, oh, well, I'll just see. If they tell me to go home or they say no, then they say no, I'll try something else. And
Yeah.
at the same time, I remember going to try and like register with agencies and talk to search firms, and no one wanted to employ me. I didn't have any industrial relations experience in the UK. You know, HR and marketing people are the first bunch to get dismissed in tough economic times. So there were a glut of really good HR people on the market. But I figured that the UK had such a broad remit of agencies that I just thought, I'm just going to ring every day. I'll just pick a new cup, you know, like 5 or 6 in a day, and I'll pick them and I'll start again, you know, and I will just have the conversation with someone that doesn't know me. And it was literally that. I mean, and that's not to say that I didn't get despondent about it or I didn't, you know, question myself, but I would kind of wake up the next day and go, I'll just find another 5 people who don't know about me, you know? And I still do this now. I still say to anyone and everyone now, I will speak to anyone, anywhere, anytime, because you never know what is going to come of that. So people will say to me, oh, I should introduce you to X person. I'm, yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I was introduced to somebody yesterday who lives and works out of Mexico. Great. Will I ever work with that person? I don't know, but I know them.
Yeah.
You know, I can introduce them to you. Do you know, like, because I think that there's so much of what we do is connecting other people. And I feel now like I have, and I probably always have, a responsibility to be able to connect people. If I know that there are people who are on the same path or on the same wavelength, then I'll be like, oh yeah, you know, I can connect you to because you do similar work, or, you know, you said you want to go and work in Mexico. This guy that I talked to lives in Mexico, like, who knows, you know? So it's that sort of common denominator. And I think ultimately the other thing, Raj, is I'm just curious. Like, I've got that childlike sense of like, what if I just did that? What if I went somewhere? Like, what if I jumped into the sea? What, you know?
I love that.
I think that has saved me a lot. And I'm not, in a lot of ways, I could do with a little bit more, you know, rational fear at times, that voice that goes, you might want to think, right? So this is a perfect example, and it doesn't really apply to, you know, what I do for a living, but I do think that this is how my brain works. So a couple of years ago, we were on holiday in Corsica. I got stung by a jellyfish, very painful. And I know that they really hurt. And so I go swimming in the sea here in Malta. Honestly, I forget to check that there's jellyfish. And, you know, we get our fair share of jellyfish here. But I don't think about it. I'm not the person who goes, oh, I better not go in for a swim because there might be jellyfish and I might get stung. I go out, you know, I've swum a half a length of the ocean and go, oh, I wonder if there's jellyfish. Do you know, like, there's a real shift. And sometimes I could be a little bit more cautious about that. But I don't feel like I've got anything to lose. If I would have got on that bus that day and gone in to speak to this guy and he would have said to me, no way, I just would have gone, oh, okay, like, you know, that's your thing. Not everyone's going to love me. Not everyone's going to give me a job. Not everyone's going to think I'm amazing, you know, but there are people who do, and there are people who will. So I'll just keep trying until I find them, you know?
Wow. I wanna pause you there because that like what you're talking about is so powerful and useful for everyone in any situation. Because you just use different examples, right? And it's perfect because what you're talking about, and this is like me almost reflecting it back based on what I heard, is you're talking about this ability to be fully present with what you're with, but then listen to this thing that wants to move forward, right? This thing that wants to try things, this thing that wants to play, and this thing that wants to see what happens. And that thing isn't really worried about stuff happening, right? It's not like you said, it's not the rational thinker that's predicting or trying to think what might happen. And you're not letting it stop you. I think that's a
Mm,
really important thing for people to get from this is there is that voice, and either it comes up before or after or during things. It's showing up sometimes.
mm,
But what I really got from you is, yeah, just try stuff because we don't know. We really don't know. The intellect can try and predict what might happen. It might be right. I don't know. Who knows? But then the funny thing is when it's right, it's like, oh, I told you so. I told you this would happen. And it will start beating us up. It'll be like, I told you, you shouldn't have done this. But it doesn't know. It does not know for sure. It's just trying to guess, like a gamble almost. Like me saying this horse has been doing well for the last few weeks. So the odds
yeah,
are it's 70% probability or whatever. Good odds, but it's not always right. We just
yeah,
don't know. And I think
yeah.
what you're telling everyone and me as well is, yeah, just try stuff and you don't have to be so attached to that voice that's saying this might happen. And you're
And
going
not
and doing
attached to
stuff.
the outcome, right? Not attached to the outcome. I
Exactly.
didn't go into that first meeting, my bus ride on the first meeting. I didn't go in thinking I'm going to be the world's expert in social media.
Yeah.
I went in thinking I have no clue what this is going to look like, whether I get it or whether I don't. I just don't know what that's going to be.
Yeah.
And then taking what it is and shaping that into something that you look forward to.
Yeah.
There were no expectations on me. And I think that's where, in a way, I feel like I have come from I know I come from quite a world of privilege anyway, but there was no one forcing me to take a particular path. There was no
Yeah.
one being very clear with me that they would be disappointed or not in whatever I chose to do.
Yeah.
And I used to do that stuff being very hard on myself, and
Mm.
that the journey between, you know, where I was and where I am now has taken a complete shift in that I don't beat myself up anymore, and I don't, tell myself that I'm not good enough and I'm rubbish, and
Yeah.
I'm much more kind to myself, thankfully, which has been a
Yeah.
really nice journey to be on. But I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it's not setting any expectations for myself. It is about just going in, being the curious one. Like, what does this look like? I don't know. Give it
Yeah.
a shot.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
it's
can
kind of
happen?
like playing dumb with yourself because we don't know, right? That intellect isn't smart all the time. It just thinks it knows. And
Yeah,
it's like, oh no, I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And it's better actually, I've realized to be like, I don't know. Even
yeah,
when I'm coaching someone and I get an assumption come in, like, oh, this is what's happening. It's
yeah.
better if sometimes I'm just like, oh, let me just wait and see and hold back. And I don't know is it feels powerful to not know and go into something saying, I just don't know. But I'm gonna try. But I do feel a bit confident about it. There's some inner force which is like, ooh, yeah, this feels good. This feels exciting. I feel like let's try this. Let's do this. This something drawing me towards it, right? Some kind of magnetic thing. But I just don't know, right?
And I sometimes I don't know what it is that drives me to do things either. You're
Mm,
right, that magnetic force is highly unknown, even
yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I wish I knew what it was. Sometimes I think it's money, it's the desire to be financially independent. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's the desire to be the crazy auntie that I am for my nieces and nephews, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just the person who just does bonkers things like that. There's different drivers, but there are certainly
Yeah.
drivers in there
Yeah.
for sure that we don't always understand. And I also think we don't have to explain them either
Exactly.
and figure them out. Like, be nice if we
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
Sure, I'd make billions, but
Yeah. 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 So this force we're talking about, like this power, this energy, this drive. What do you do in terms of like habits, let's say, that keeps it fueled? Let's say what keeps your life force fueled so the car is moving well, so the car isn't getting like it's junk thrown inside there, which might slow it down. Because I know for me, the reason I ask this, because for me, most people know I'm into like movement and nutrition and all of that stuff, right? Energy. And I know for me, if I eat certain foods, or I overwork my body or something like that, or underwork my body, I feel it affect that life force, right? And equally, I feel the things that give it better fuel, right? So I'm asking most people this actually, and I'd love for you to share, like, what is it for you that brings it up, that keeps it clear?
I think that for me, it's gratitude. I think that any day above ground is a good one. I think that the day that my feet hit the ground and I take a breath and I can get out of bed and go, I got another day. And even saying that and describing that to you makes me feel emotional. I am so fortunate to be here where life is so precious and things happen so quickly that
Yeah.
I do literally wake up most days and go, oh, I got another go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get another opportunity to be a different me, or to, one of my drivers is literally doing different things. So I am one of those people who, even as, actually part of what made me leave the job in financial services was getting on the tube, going to the tube every day, getting
Yeah.
off, walking to the office, getting my coffee, like that robotic
Yeah.
repetition just wanted me to, make me poke my eyes out with a stick. And that was probably more than anything. So I would do things like I'd walk to Waterloo and then get on the tube, or I'd cycle to and from work in a different way, or just something, and even as basic as when I have a shower, it's not like I don't do 1, 2, 3. I'm one day I might just be like, oh, okay, I'm going to brush my teeth first, and then I'm going to wash my face, and then, so that I always mix things up. I'm not a creature of habit. I can't be the person who, one of the best people I ever worked with in my life was such a creature of habit. It would be like 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. He would go to the market and he would buy his tomatoes, like, and I would laugh at that because I loved seeing him do that. But I can't do that to save myself. Like, I can't be that rigid and that structured. It's helpful to me because when I want to achieve something, I do have the power to do that. When I was working in that job, I'd get up in the morning, I would meditate, I would play my guitar, I would get my stuff ready, and then I would go to the office, right? That was my rigid kind of set thing. But I don't, it's not what drives me. I like the difference. One of the things after I quit the job in financial services, I took some time off and I did this kind of audit on myself about what's the stuff that I like, what's the stuff I'm good at, and what is the work that I want to do. And I remember saying, the conversation I had with the universe at the time was, I'd like it to be a bit bitty. I'd like to be, one day I get up and I do like maybe a whole day's work, and the next day I've kind of got 2 clients, you know. And that is exactly what I have right now, because that I wanted that vast difference, you know. So I think there are a lot of things, when I really genuinely think about it, it is the gratitude and appreciation for having this life. And I love that term. I love your term of life force. It's like, what is it? You know, trying to dig underneath what makes us do the stuff that we do. Mine is absolute gratitude. I woke up, I got to live, you know. And if I get to live, then I get to talk to people about different things. I get to be an example, hopefully a good one for people. You know, I get to learn how to be kinder and more compassionate to myself. I get to learn how to teach my clients that. You know, I get to learn new experiences and see different things. So that's enough for me. It sounds almost ironic. It's that life force in itself is what drives me to have something always going on or going forward, you know. And I'm not Hillary Clinton or Richard Branson. Like, you know, I'm not massively successful, and I don't have, you know, billions of euros in the bank. I probably wouldn't mind, but also I for myself, I can get to a place where I know what enough looks like, you know, whether that's good enough or, you know, being in a way. I used to think that being successful in a business was having this massive, big organization and billions of people working for me. And it's not what I want, actually, you know. I could do that. I was speaking to a friend in Sydney in the week, and, you know, he works in this big job and is on the board and stuff. And I was like, you know, when I talk to him, I'm like, oh, that sounds really great, you know, but I just know what would happen. I would go there, I would probably say something that nobody liked, and end up by, you know, completely alien people again. But I like I do think, and it's really interesting because it's only since you've been using that term life force that I've really questioned, what is it? What's the thing that makes me get up in the morning? And, you know, and that's not to say I don't question, you know, we all have the existential questions of, you know, what are we here for? And I don't think I've got all the answers to that just yet. But doing enough, you know, and sometimes I might have a day where I work for a big corporate client and then I work for individual clients, and I get something different out of each of them. You know, the thing that makes me happy with what I've done. You know, content.
Yeah. What I'm getting from you, just listening to all of that stuff, it really feels like for you it's important to be connected to something, right? I don't know what that is, but just connected to something, connected to a mission, connected to helping people, connected to what you want in life, connected to the lifestyle, and actually living in alignment with that, right? Like actually living that way rather than it's an idea, is something that you're doing in your life, right? You're embodying that thing, that energy.
Yeah. I've always thought that we're not here for very long. You know, life's pretty short, and it almost sounds, it probably will sound like a cliche, but I am currently 56. My dad died kind of a month before his 58th birthday, so I'm not far off where he was when he died. And I remember at the time thinking, all you've ever wanted to do is retire and then go and live something else,
Mm.
and you never got to do it. And so that was enough for me to then just go, what if I don't get there? What if I die tomorrow? What if I die next week? What if I live till I'm 110 as well? Like there's a question.
Yeah.
For me, I didn't, I was 34 or something, I think, when my dad died. So I was at that point where I kind of, I've got my whole life ahead of me. I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to be stuck in a job I don't like, saving up money for my retirement so that I get to this age and I get to, drive a caravan around Australia. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that just wasn't where I wanted to be. I see a map of the world still now after all of the travels that I've done and go, oh my God, there's entire continents I've never set foot on before. It's like, how am I going to read all the books? How am I going to listen to all the podcasts? How am I going to hear all the bands? How am I going to see all the movies? Like, there's just, I've got such a curiosity and such a thirst for knowledge and things and difference that I want that to drive how I live my life. So many people say to me since I moved to Malta, like, oh, how long do you think you'll live there for? I'm like, could be forever. Till next Saturday.
I love that.
I don't know. We went to the UK for a year. I stayed there for 13 years because every year when the lease was due, we would look at each other and go, do we stay another one?
Yeah.
Because
I love that.
There's nothing we hated about it.
Yeah.
And then it did get to the point where, where Brexit became something and it was an issue for me. It was the very first time in the whole time that I'd lived in the UK where I actually felt unwanted.
Right.
And I felt like an immigrant. Now, obviously, I'm Australian, I'm white, I'm, came from a very privileged background. I could just assimilate into the UK because I have my EU passport. No one's going to ask any questions. But I remember that day thinking, I don't feel welcome anymore, And that was a big enough change for us to be able to go, why not? Why not go now? We can go now. Like, what's stopping us from going now? Nothing.
Yeah.
And it's too, Raj. Like, I don't know. I still don't know whether I made the right decision, whether it's the best outcome. I don't know. But, it's a pretty good one for now.
Yeah, I love that, that's very inspiring for me to hear. And I'm sure some people listening would, because firstly, you don't actually look 55 or whatever. You've got some kind of like fountain of youth or whatever going on. I don't know. Because your energy levels, your life force is insane. You got a vibrancy about you. That's the first thing I'll say. If anyone's listening to this, they have to check out the video just to check. Got a vibrant, even the color of your top is vibrant, so it suits you. That's the first thing. And I think that goes into how you're living, right? But the second thing is that you're living intuitively, really, right? You're feeling into it. Oh, I'm in this situation now. Okay, what feels like the next step for now? For now, I don't know how long I'm going to do it for, but for now. So what I got really curious about, because I know you're into like spiritual kind of living, right? You might not be able to tell that from listening to you if it's the first time you've listened to Sharon, but she is, even though she's doing all this like high level leadership work. I don't know what to call it, but like real corporate work, right? Where it's helping these high level leaders move forward. So imagine this. Here's a scenario for you to play with, right? Imagine that you have someone in front of you and they have this kind of thirst to, or this vision, let's say, this vision of some place they want to get to. That could either be in the corporate world, career, it could be just a person in life who wants to move towards something, right? They really want this. It's coming from the right places in them. So there's this level of, okay, this place in the future looks great and I want to move towards that, right? From the present. So how do you get someone in this place where they're fully content with where they are now, whilst going towards their desired future, right? And I've asked myself this question, and many other people as well, right? So I'd love to hear. Imagine you had this scenario. Either you can answer it for yourself, or you can answer it for if you had someone in front of you that you were helping. How would you approach this?
So I think differently about that, Raj, because, and my own experience, and certainly the experience that I have for some of my clients as well, is that unless you are either slightly or very uncomfortable about where you are, you don't want to go forward. You don't want to go somewhere else. So I think that we can sometimes kid ourselves that we're in a place that we're perfectly happy and perfectly comfortable. And I remembered that so vividly, through so many periods of my life. One of them actually was when I thought I was happily married, right? And then realized that I wasn't, because I met my current partner and he kind of got in my way, and I was just like, oh my God, what's happening to me? I remember going home, kind of
Yeah.
sliding down the wall, looking at my wedding photo going, really? Really? Wow. Okay. And so I wasn't in that place. I thought I was. I thought it was perfectly comfortable, but I wasn't. So I think there's no drive, there's no desire for something else. If I'm perfectly happy and perfectly comfortable here, I don't need to look for something else, right? I think some of that journey is helping people identify if there is any discomfort there. Is this exactly where you want to be? One of the tools that I use with my coaching clients is, if you're in exactly the same place 6 months, 12 months, 5 years from now, how's that going to feel? And every time I ask that question, 98% of people will literally like shudder or physically react in some way that says no. So that kind of gives me something to work with. So if you're not perfectly comfortable now, what is it that you want to get to? So it's helping them to identify what's really going on in the now for them, but also what they want. Sometimes that's that really futuristic thing. Imagine it's the best possible thing that you could think about. You're living in a penthouse and you've got billions of pounds, and you're helping everybody and you're giving all your money away, and whatever it is. And then bring it back to what's a realistic version of that. What could you get to? Because most ideas are crazy ideas, when we think about them, and then at some point we kind of go, oh yeah, I could do that. It doesn't have to be in that way. So it's kind of throwing it out there. What's your wildest dream? And then working it back towards what's achievable. What can you do now that's going to fix something or get you somewhere? So yeah, I think there is a desire within us that wants us to move forward. It's not always obvious to us. We might think that we are perfectly happy. Sometimes we're just not.
Yeah, I love that answer, because it's like I keep unraveling things that there's, and I think the thing that I've learned, or I've come to, is if I'm coming from that vision in a grounded way, if I'm like, oh yes, this would be exciting, if it's lighting me up, right? If it's lighting me up and getting me excited, rather than creating this scarcity in my present, like, oh my God, I'm not here yet, or the judgment that comes with it, right? then it's a good thing for me, because it's like, okay, now I can move forward. I'm here now. I'm here, being okay with I'm here now, right? First, I'm here now, and then, oh, let's go over there. And I keep unraveling these exciting new things I want to do, and these exciting things, plans or whatever. But then always have to remind myself that right now I'm okay. Like, it's okay to be here,
Yep.
right?
Yep. And even if it's not a great place to be, there has to be some recognition, some comfort, some support, acceptance, treating
Acceptance,
ourselves
yeah,
with kindness. That has to
yeah,
be, this is where I am right now. It might suck like a Hoover, right?
yeah,
But it's all we've got.
yeah,
And tomorrow it might be a little bit less, and tomorrow it might be a little bit less, and after that it
yeah,
might be a little less. But I
yeah,
think paying attention and giving credit to where we are right now, the days that I did not want to get out of bed, the days that I was in my duvet thinking I'm just a loser and what have I done and this is
yeah,
crazy, I stayed with it. That's where I am for today, because tomorrow, guess what? It's going to be another day. Something different
yeah,
is going to, I'm going to go to sleep and it's going to be very different. And
yeah,
inevitably it was,
yeah,
and I know I'm very blessed for that to happen. I'm not saying for 1 second that it's just easy to not be depressed or it's easy to have a
yeah.
focus. I'm not saying that for a minute, but I did have hope, and I did have faith that something would be different.
Mm.
Something.
Yeah, yeah, that's powerful, because it's as if, like, in those thoughts or those words, um, it creates itself, right? You've created that tomorrow now. Oh, it's gonna be, yeah, this sucks. I'm accepting it. I know it sucks. I'm owning that it sucks. Even if I made it suck, I did this, right? I screwed up. I made this suck. Yeah, cool. Like, let me just
Yeah.
sit with that.
Yep.
But just that knowing of it's gonna pass, right? Oh, tomorrow will be different. It's like just that thought entering into the energy of us,
Yep.
it makes it happen somehow. And sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes it doesn't, but it allows for that opportunity for the new day to be fresh, and we see it that way. We create it that way, right?
Yeah. And I think even challenging ourselves to have a bit of fun with it, like you're right. Like, yes, I made it suck. I messed that up to such a
Yeah.
degree that, actually that's just crap. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
all my doing. And that was rubbish.
Yeah.
Part of me is about, so what do I do differently? What can I
Mm.
change? Um,
Yeah.
what's the one thing or a thing that is going to make that different?
Yeah.
I'm in control of that, no one else. You know,
Love that.
I often think that I'm very blessed to have this mindset without a doubt. I don't know how, I don't know where it came from, but I got it. And I do believe in the ability of our, plastic brains to be able to grow and change. And I do believe in things like growth mindset, but that thing for me about acceptance has been a really big piece. There is nothing wrong
Mm.
with sitting in the crappy times. Right now, this is just rubbish.
Yeah.
And that's where it is. Is it going to get better? I hope so. What can I do to make it better? I don't know. Make a list, do something different. I always talk about, you just do one thing different. If you look at your phone every morning before you get out of bed, just one day, get up, pick up that phone, go out to the kitchen, make a cup of tea, and then sit down and look at it. Do you know, like one tiny little thing that you can do differently that then you can rejoice in? Oh, yeah, I changed that. Great. Then you got the power to change something else.
Yeah, I love that. That's empowerment, right? That's empowerment for you. And like what you said is acceptance and empowerment. Like, so it's almost a surrender, right? Hey, I wave my flag. okay, I'm surrendering. I wave my flag to me and to my mind. Okay, you win. I'm just gonna lay back and stay with it. And I'm also gonna empower myself to do what could be useful, right? I like what you said earlier. It's like from this place of acceptance and surrender where
Mm.
not attached, not
And
attached.
the word surrender, man, I've had such a interesting relationship with in my life,
Yeah,
because surrender before to me meant mediocrity, that I would just accept that I'm going to sit on the couch and eat nachos all day long, right?
yeah,
And that's actually not the case,
yeah.
because it doesn't mean we're surrendering forever. It doesn't mean that we're giving up. It just
Yeah.
means it's okay to feel what I'm feeling.
Mm,
So I love the use of the word surrender, because it takes a lot of guts to surrender to something. And I can wholeheartedly say that from my own experience. Because surrendering
yeah.
usually, one of my greatest fears, I always used to say, is mediocrity. And I would think, if I surrender to something, then I'm just going to be mediocre, and that's just going to be the end of me. But that's not my experience.
Yeah. Sorry, I lost the sound for a second. It's back now. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I missed the last bit, so apologies for that. But we're actually gonna come to the end of the podcast soon. And I'm gonna drop a bomb of a question towards this end, right? I'm gonna drop a bomb of a question. And you could take however long you want to answer it, because it's gonna be like one of the last questions. Um, how would you describe for you love as an energy rather than like, hey, I love you, I love this, I love that? Love is an energy experience that we have. And how, and here's the second part of the question, how can that energy help someone to lead their life?
Oh, wow. I should probably take a day to answer this question, so I could
I
think
know.
about it for
Okay,
20
cool.
hours and come back to you with my response.
Yeah.
Ask me again, Raj, because I want it to sink in.
Yeah, yeah, feel it when I say this. So, how would you describe love as an energy experience? So, it moving through you, feeling it, rather than I love you or I love this, how do you feel it inside of you, that energy of love? And then the second part of it is how can you use that energy, that life force that's moving through you as love to lead your life?
I think it's interesting, actually, because you asked me that question, and there's a lightning storm going on over here. And I'm just like, hey,
Okay.
kind of feels like that. Um,
Yeah.
it does to me. It does feel like, I have said this to you before, and all the times that we've spoken, when I speak to you, I get that genuine physical feeling of excitement, right?
Mm,
And I know when I speak to, I get it from some of my clients. I get it when I'm talking to, older people who live in Malta that have the same history as my grandparents had, for example. It's for me, it is a genuine physical feeling. It feels, it feels exciting. There's a part of me that feels like, oh my God, I'm feeling nervous or anxious about this, right? Sometimes I feel it before I know what's going on. Sometimes I can go, oh, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling uncomfortable. And then I'm like, oh, actually, no, this is a good thing. Like, I'm excited. That's why I'm
yeah.
feeling like, you know. Um, it's something that I have to pay attention to. And you said before about living intuitively.
Mm,
When I'm coaching, probably the place we did the coaching school, that would be like, that's not the way to go. I've got this little intuitive voice, or this other person that comes up and goes, oh, say this, say this, say
yeah.
this. Because it's a real, it almost feels like, 80% of my physical body mass is this life force, you know.
Yeah.
It is a ball of energy in me that very occasionally goes, oh, like a lightning strike, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's a good thing. By the same token, if I am in a situation where I am with somebody who has lots of negative energy, I can feel that, like someone is touching me physically. I can be,
Yeah.
you know, in somewhere where there's a very dark black energy, I can feel it. I'm very sensitive to a lot of things. I'm sensitive to my own emotions, but I'm also very sensitive to other people's emotions. So going to, you know, places like Auschwitz, for example, which I've been to once, where I spent the entire time crying. I couldn't actually get over, you know, what was happening. I've been to, you know, the cemetery where John F. Kennedy was buried, and there are hundreds and thousands of people there. You know, I felt physically charged with, you know, spirits and a force and an energy within people, and I can feel it. You know, I've met people here where I've said 10 words to them, and I remember once meeting a guy here, met him down, you know, on the beach. We were talking. I came back up and cried because there was so much emotion in the connection that we had, where I've never met this guy ever before in my life.
Yeah.
It is physical for me a lot of the time. How do I use it to lead my life? I guess I try and channel it, you know, I try and use that energy in the best way I can, being grateful for being alive, waking up thinking, I've got this physical energy, you know, what am I going to do with it? You know, do yoga or go for a run or go for a swim, or, you know, something that's going to be able to, that I can share it, you know, that I can convert it. But I do feel like it's physical. That's why we're connected. You know, it's why you and I had that thing from the beginning of like, this is somebody I'm probably going to know for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah.
I think that when you're in a way like that, and I have it with my partner. I knew from the minute I set eyes on him, the minute, you know, that's what got me questioning, am I really happily married? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like it's like someone sticks a stick in a spoke, you know, from a bike wheel that's moving, and all of a sudden it just like, bang. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, now I've got to pay attention. And I do feel it as physical. I can feel it. You know, I've been in situations where I've had family members, you know, visiting me, and it's all been very chaotic, and, you know, it's great. And then they've left, and I've been like, what's going on? I don't understand it. Sometimes I don't understand what's happening within me as well. So I've got to pay attention to it. I've got to see what that is. You know, I've got to ask myself, am I nervous? Am I anxious? Am I excited? And if I am any of those things, why? What's this about? What's going on? Sometimes I'm never going to get an answer. I don't know. It's bigger than me, way bigger than me. But I can see it, and I can feel it, and I can choose to be connected to either the good energy and the good life force, or not. You know, that for me is, it is a choice. Every single day I can choose to be associated with good ideas, good people doing good things.
Yeah.
You know, I can follow that with whatever drives me, you know, in a certain way. I think some of it is intuition. I think some of it is knowing without speaking at times, you just know. I've met people that I've had a conversation with that I couldn't explain to you why I felt immediately comfortable in their presence, but I did.
Yeah.
Or I felt immediately uncomfortable, and I feel this kind of black mass.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thankfully, they're much rarer than the others, but
Yeah.
I love it. That's what the connection of humanity is all about, I think.
Mm.
Does that
Wow.
answer your question, though?
Yeah, that's a powerful. Yeah, it did in some way. So what I got from that is, yeah, this force is in you, and you're using it as guidance. It's giving you signals here and there, and when you're paying attention to it, it's giving you signals, right? And I love that because it's like you said, it's like the lightning outside. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. It's coming from something beyond us, right? But we've got access to it is in us. And yeah, the way you described how you use it is, I think, something everyone can take from in some way or some form, right? Based on what you said. Um, Listening to it, listening in. What is that feeling? What is that? What is that energy in me? Everyone's got energy, right? What is that? How does that shape up when I'm around this? When I do this? How can I use this now? Because it's like once you get familiar with what helps it, what supports it, what drives it, how can I use this thing to help me create something, create a business, create a
Yeah.
change, move towards this thing that I want to move towards.
I think the first part is paying attention to it, or acknowledging that something's going on, right? And like anything, whether it's the voice in our head or that energy force, we sometimes don't acknowledge it. We
Mm,
don't recognize that it's there. So paying attention to it, starts to tune you into what's happening here. Am I nervous because I'm just nervous, or am I anxious? Is that a good anxious, or is that a bad anxious?
yeah, yeah,
Being able to
yeah.
determine what those feelings actually are. Because for
Mm,
most of us, and certainly people in my generation, we weren't ever told about feelings. So we've had to work through understanding, what we feel. Uh,
yeah,
and when that doesn't come naturally to you as a small child, having to learn those feelings means that you have to, as you get older, you have to pay extra attention, right?
yeah,
There's so many children now who are taught to have proper conversation around what they're actually feeling, that I
yeah,
hope, can change the world for the better, because those conversations that drive that actually put that energy out there for a public debate, rather
yeah,
than it be hidden.
yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, wow. I gotten so much from this conversation. And whoever's listening, I hope you have too. Like I'll say a few highlights for me. A few highlights for me is trying stuff and seeing what happens. Let's just put it that way, right? Being curious, actually. No, let's start with that. Being curious and letting go of what you think will happen, even if it sounds convincing and even if it turns out to be true, right? Just trying something, even if rationally it doesn't sound like a good idea or whatever. Sounds like you've been a good example of that through your life. And I think everyone listening can take some of that, because it's not about a certain person can do this. Everyone can do this, right? Try things out, test out stuff, and learn from those experiences. So that's one thing I got from this. And actually, that I think that's all I'm going to say. That feels like one of the most powerful messages that I got from it was continuously try stuff, because then you learn, you have a real experience of it rather than a projection in the head, right? And I have
Yeah.
to keep reminding myself of that. No matter what I do, what I keep doing,
Yeah.
it still comes up, right? Imposter syndrome or fear or worry keeps
Yeah.
coming up.
Yep. I do the same. I mean, in the summer, I remember thinking, oh, as a kid, I used to just jump into the sea without thinking about it. So I
Yeah.
scrambled up some rocks and I stood there. It took me like 10 minutes before I was like, oh my God, if I'm going to jump in,
Yeah.
I'm going to die if I jump in. And then just actually getting to a point where I just thought, it's just the water, it's not that far away. It was maybe,
Yeah.
12. And I did it because I thought, if I don't make myself do it, that's when I start to lose that edge, right? That's when I start to go, oh no, it's too hard, or oh no, I'm scared.
Yeah,
But if I step
exactly.
outside of that every now and then and do something bonkers, like swim in the Black Sea in the middle of winter, hopefully I can remind myself that,
Yeah.
and like I've always said, there's always another way, we just got to find it.
Yeah. I love that. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to go out of this experience with a lot of wisdom. Hope everyone listening has. And if you have any questions for Sharon or for me about this conversation, about anything that you might like we said, right? Things just sometimes spark, So if you've heard something from this, from Sharon or from me, you can contact her. I'm going to put her details below. She'll be happy to have a chat with you, I'm sure. And same with me. If you want to talk about anything we discussed, feel free, because I've got a ton of experience with all this fear stuff and worry stuff, and so is Sharon. So yeah, feel free to contact either of us. And I'd also invite everyone listening to have a little ponder about an insight you might have got from this. If you've spent the whole episode listening to this interesting conversation, it was for me anyway. If you spend the whole conversation, if you've listened to this whole thing, what is one thing you're taking away from it? That's what I invite you all to check in with yourself for. Sharon, is there anything else you want to say before we finish?
Oh, look, not really. I think, as I said, I feel like I feel like this is a gift, right, that I've got, and I'm very fortunate. And I don't want to presume that everybody is going to be the same. But I also do think that if we just try something little, that somebody else has suggested every now and then, we've got nothing to lose. It's not ours to lose. So,
Yeah,
if we give it a shot and then we don't like it, we'll be like, oh, it wasn't mine anyway. I wasn't wedded to it.
yeah,
Just that
yeah,
sense of curiosity, and also just that sense of challenging ourselves, not pushing ourselves, not berating ourselves, doing it and doing it kindly, and
yeah,
actually being able to say, it's okay, do it, or don't do it. And if you don't do it, that's okay too, because there's even in the not doing, there's progress. We
yeah.
don't think about that, but it's true.
Mm, wow. Even in the not doing this progress. Ooh, that's gonna stick. I'm gonna ponder on that one myself, actually, right after this call. Wow. Okay. Cool. You've stunned me with that one. So I think it's the great time to end. I think I
Good
have to
way to
like still digest that. I'm gonna write it down and think about what that actually means for me now. It's exactly what I'm gonna do after this.
I love
So I
it.
think that's a great point to end this episode on. Again, I appreciate having you on, and everyone can check you out to see what you're up to and all of that. LinkedIn, whatever else. I'll just share your information. So yeah, I appreciate you being here and sharing all of your amazing wisdom through like life, through coaching. Remember, everyone, she helps high level leaders in a very corporate sense as well. So this is the wisdom she's sharing that's universal for all types of people. So it's awesome to have you on.
Well, it's my absolute privilege and honor to be asked, Raj. So thank you so very much. It's been great fun. I've loved it. Thank you.
No worries. All right. See you guys later, and we'll speak soon. Maybe see you in the next episode.
Definitely.